Welcome in, everyone. Sorry we were a minute or two behind, just a few technical difficulties, which I'm sure we could all relate to. I'll just give it a few seconds just to let everyone get into the webinar, and then we will get started. All right, let's go ahead and hop in. First off, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Zencity Impact webinar. My name is Philly Munden. I will be your moderator here for this session, and just want to thank you all for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Before we dive into the discussion, let me just give you a quick introduction to Zencity. Zencity is the leading community engagement and analytics platform designed to help local government make data-driven decisions that truly reflect the needs of their residents. Through AI-driven insights, we can help cities and law enforcement agencies better understand community sentiment, enhance public safety strategies, and build trust with their residents. So this webinar is a part of our Zencity Impact Series, an initiative that's focused on bringing together professionals in law enforcement, in local government, and in civic engagement to share their best practices, their challenges, and their solutions. To continue the conversation beyond today, we do invite you to join our LinkedIn group. It's Zencity Impact, Local Government USA. You can find that in the chat because I know that's a bit of a long title. The link just got posted if you'd like to join us there. It's a space where you can keep discussing insights from today's session and connect with peers within your industry. So today's focus is on how to effectively engage the public in budget planning. So we're thrilled to have an amazing panel with us. Mr. Ronell Hampton, Omar Cardenas, and Kayla Hunt are on the line with us today. I will let our panel introduce themselves. So Ronell, first over to you.
Thank you so much, Philly. Hello, everyone. My name is Renell Hampton. I am the Principal Equity Strategist for the City of Los Angeles Civil Rights Department. Super excited to be on this call discussing our LA Repair Program. I'll hand it over to Omar.
Thank you, Ronell. My name is Omar Cardenas. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for LA Repair. Right now, I'm helping oversee the start of the contracting for the second cohort, and it's a pleasure to share space with you all. And I'll pass it on to Kayla.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kayla Hunt, and I am currently the Communications and Engagement Specialist with Charles County Government. I'm really happy to be here, and I primarily help shape the county's internal and external communication strategies, and I'm excited to talk about our budget engagement strategy for fiscal year 2026.
Amazing. Thank you guys for the introduction. Before we dive in to hear what these folks are doing within their respective cities and counties, we do have a few poll questions for our attendees. So I believe we will be sharing that on the screen. Okay, you should see a poll pop up. There's a few different questions we have for you. This will also help kind of guide the panelist conversation to make sure we kind of hit on things that are top of mind. So we'll give you folks just a few minutes to complete the poll. Oh, I had to open my screen so I could see it better. Okay, so right now we're looking at what's your biggest challenge when engaging the public on budget topics? I saw first it was low participation or low turnout, but it looks like the second option has taken the lead with a lack of trust in government. Before we hop into our presentation, Ronell, Kayla, Omar, curious if that resonates with you guys as well. Do you feel like people don't want to participate in budget planning or conversations with you due to a lack of trust, or is it just kind of like a low turnout and it's hard to engage with folks?
Yeah, I guess start it off. From the experience we've had doing outreach with LA Repair, trust in government, the government has always been definitely one of our driving factors when doing outreach. So definitely setting ourselves up for success by leaning into the community members that are participating in our program is key because no one knows the community like the community themselves. So it really is just paying your dues and showing good faith and goodwill with the community, and eventually you build that repertoire. And that's been something that's helped us out, but we've definitely had struggles in the past with that matter.
100%. I had someone describe it to me as making deposits in a bank, like in your little piggy bank. That way, when things happen, the trust is already being built up slowly over time. So when you want to get your residents' engagement or feedback around a topic, you've already been making those little deposits over time. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What tools or methods do you currently use for your budget engagement? Really interested to see what our attendees have to say about that one. So far, it looks like public forums or town halls is the leading, followed by online and social media. Looks like a few more answers are trickling in. Okay, so public forums or town halls is the leading tool currently around budget engagement. For our panelists, would you say that that's the same for you all, or are you guys using other tools or social media or online surveys?
I can take this one since Omar took the last one. I would say that we engage in all of these tools during our budget engagement strategy, but I will say this year we did rely more on online engagement tools to increase participation from our community because we found that they were having trouble committing or finding the time to commit to in-person opportunities such as town halls and community meetings.
Amazing, fantastic. Thank you, Kayla. Let's move on to the next question. How confident are you in your community's current public engagement during the budget process? Interesting. Not confident is at the top right now. I wonder if this is related to some of the other questions that we asked in the beginning, just understanding that there's a low lack of trust and participation. Doing things in person, we don't always get the best turnout or reach the majority of folks that we're trying to hear from. Um, to the panel, how do you guys feel about? I know we'll get into it a little bit more about your current process and how you engage folks, but does this resonate with you, or did it resonate with you before you started trying new things that you weren't super confident in how you were doing things previously?
I think this is a really great question. When I think of this, I want to say that it's important for you to define what success looks like, so that you understand what you're being confident in, right? And so I know
Mm,
for us, we're a large city, right? And so it was important for us to engage multiple regions and to ensure that we did our due diligence to maximize that engagement. So I think when you're thinking of target demographics, ages, right? We wanted to ensure that we engage youth, also the elder folks in our community, and also geographical priorities, right? And so once we understood where our challenges may be, we can then prioritize strategic outreach through our partnerships. But again, sometimes what you find is that once you're collecting data on that outreach and understand who you're actually reaching, you find gaps, right? And that can weigh confidence. But I think one of the things that is important is to develop a process that identifies key target demographics so that you can measure, your impact over time and correct course if necessary, right? But really identifying what those challenges may be up front will help you come up with a strategy to mitigate some of those challenges, or leverage community partnerships to reach hard to reach demographics.
Yeah, really, really well said, Ronell. Not everything is like a one size fits all when it comes to engagement. Different neighborhoods, different demographics, speak different languages, all types of things. So, understanding who you're trying to reach and the easiest way for that person or that neighborhood could really, really go a long way. It's really well said. Okay, I think we have one more? Okay, no, we are through our poll. Thank you guys for participating. So now I'm going to kick it over to Kayla from Charles County, who's going to tell us a little bit more about their process and what they've been doing.
Thank you so much, Philly. Before I dive into our budget engagement process for this most recent fiscal year, just to give a little bit of background about Charles County, we are located in Southern Maryland, so we are still within the Washington, D.C. metro area. We're about 45 minutes outside of D.C., and we have around 166,000 residents, which is still relatively smaller compared to like our neighboring jurisdictions like Prince George's County, Washington, D.C., but we are rapidly growing. And our population is very diverse, that consists both of long-term residents who have been in the county for about 20 years, and they kind of really want to maintain the county's traditional character, doesn't really want to see much change in the county and want things to stay the same as when they first moved here 20 years ago. And then we also have newcomers who have um, very different priorities compared to those longtime residents. And they're more so looking for change that's kind of aimed at enhancing their family's quality of life. Um, so I work with Charles County government as a communications and engagement specialist, and we are governed by a board of commissioners, and we have about 1,000 plus staff, and we've kind of been working to like serve as the administrative backbone of the county. And my job specifically is to kind of help balance the different priorities of our residents and communicate with them in a way that meets both of their needs. And so specifically related to our budget planning for this fiscal year, we were facing a challenging year due to changes at the state of Maryland level. So they were shifting costs to the county, and that was presenting some challenges within our budget. So we were kind of really focused on engaging with residents specifically on how they can help us find solutions to addressing those challenges in a way that reflects residents' priorities. And one of the main challenges that we faced during this budget process was that residents were skeptical about the value of their participation. So we had two different online budget surveys, and when we promoted these surveys on our channels, one of the primary comments that we got from residents was, why should I participate in this? Our board of commissioners are going to decide what they want anyway. My feedback is not going to be used, so it's kind of a waste of my time. And kind of this wasn't really surprising given the current climate of distrust in government. So we kind of were anticipating this type of concern over community engagement and participation. And another major challenge that we faced was that we were trying to make sure that the online surveys that we produce generated diverse participation, because we do have those like loud voices who come to every community meeting, who come to every town hall, who's always posting on our Facebook pages. So kind of trying to make sure that we were hearing from residents that we don't typically hear from, and making sure that their ideas and suggestions were also going to be considered in the budget decision making process.
Yeah, Kayla, we hear about those loud voices so often from our partners here at Zencity that we gave them a name. We call them the STPs, the same 10 people. And when you're trying to collect feedback, while we love that they're super engaged, and I know you guys want to hear from them, it does make it really challenging to know how everyone else is feeling beyond those STPs. So, love to hear about
Exactly.
the challenge and what you guys are doing to overcome that. I also, before you continue, just want to share to our guests, if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll make sure I get them answered by our panelists.
Yeah, thank you, Philly. Some of the solutions that we tried to come up with to overcome these challenges, we really wanted to prioritize transparent communication and education throughout the entire budget process. So from start to finish, we knew that we wanted to be as transparent as possible with our budget process, especially given that we were facing a tough budget year, and then also trying to make sure people were educated about it as well. So, like, what does it mean that the state of Maryland was pushing costs onto the county? Now, what are the implications of that? And, what are we going to do about it? And how can residents get involved in the process? So, we used a variety of tools to explain the complicated state funding shifts, such as our Let's Get Fiscal podcast, which is a podcast series that focuses on all things related to county government finances, spending, budget. Um, we leverage the Zencity Engage platform to provide real-time updates about where we are in the budget, and we also use that platform to engage with residents through our online surveys. Um, and then also when we were getting those comments on social media, we also tried to be really responsive to that. So we had our director of fiscal and administrative services do quick, short, reel videos addressing those, resident concerns and complaints, and explaining why their engagement and participation was necessary, and then how we were going to use the results from the survey to know that, to reassure them that their feedback and participation will be valued and will be considered when during budget discussions with the commissioners, and they are going to be used to impact decisions in the upcoming budget.
Yeah, it's kind of like you guys took some of the feedback you were getting, like, we don't want to do this, no one's going to listen to our opinion, and then you had some strategic messaging around that to address their concern and explain why their participation is so important. I think that that's really, really valuable. Not like shying away from some of the negative discourse you may see on your social media account or your Facebook page, but actually addressing it and just kind of sharing with your residents where you guys are at. I love that. Uh, Back to you, Kayla.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think it really was effective. We did receive an increase in engagement compared to last year's online budget engagement process. So we think being responsive and transparent um, kind of was effective, and reassuring residents that their participation is valued. But there were some key lessons that we learned from this budget engagement process that I'm also going to go in a little bit later when we do the Q&A portion of this webinar. But we really felt that it's important for county governments to not underestimate the importance and value of providing transparent communication and education that is accessible to all residents, because like I mentioned previously, we kind of have a diverse community with differing priorities, and kind of making sure that like all of their needs are being met and all of their voices are being heard, not just the loudest voices in the room. And then also just making sure that we're presenting information in a way that is easy for them to understand, easy for them to digest, because the budget is a really complex topic, even for me. Like, I'm a communications person. If you math and numbers are not my thing, if you give me a budget book, I'm probably going to have a hard time interpreting exactly what that means. So trying to really not just dump a whole bunch of budget related documents and information in their hands, but kind of really explaining to them and educating them on what that means, and how they can get involved.
Amazing. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so before I kind of dive into Kayla's story and ask some questions, I want to give our other panelists a chance to share what they've been doing with their budget process. So I will kick it over to Omar and Ronell to share about LA Repair.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Philly and Kayla. Again, my name is Omar Cardenas, and we'll be going over just what were the meat and bones about LA Repair. So let me just get to my slides here. LA Repair standing for Reforms for Equity and Public Acknowledgement of Institutional Racism. It's a program that was founded a few years ago, around 2020, in response to the riots that were happening here in Los Angeles, the George Floyd protest. And the city allocated $8.5 million to be distributed amongst 9 different communities deemed called repair zones. And we'll go down in a later slide what exactly repair zones are and how were they determined. But here we have a infographic of roughly how the process went about, right? So we started with the design process, and this is where we leaned in. We really set the ground rules and the foundation of the program. We enlisted the assistance of us advisory committee members, which again, these are all community members based off the neighborhoods that we'll be doing this program in, and as well as steering committee members. And the steering committee were more of the folks that really helped set the ground rules, the guidelines, and so on. Next up was we went into the idea collection phase, and this is when we finally went into. I'm sorry, the back to the last slide, please. The idea collection phase really was where we finally went into the community and asked them, what are some of the issues that you see in your community? What are some things that you would like to see addressed? So we collected a lot of that information and aggregated it and created it into program concepts, which are kind of like guidelines for each neighborhood or repair zone, as we call them, to see what are the biggest issues that the community sees in their own community, right? Because considering how big and extensive Los Angeles is, you could imagine one problem here might not be a problem there, as you could imagine. So we've definitely been very transparent throughout this whole process, um, because no neighborhood is the same. So we want to make sure that this is reflective and anyone from those communities can see, well, yeah, that is very spot on, because sometimes they do overlap with different communities, but sometimes they're completely different. So we went into the next stage, which is the develop proposal stage, and we invited local organizations that serve these neighborhoods to submit a proposal on how to address some of the problems. Next on is once we went through the proposals, sorted them, and moved on to the next stage, we went into voting. So we went back into the community and asked them to vote to see which proposal they would like to be implemented in the program. And again, all these proposals were meant to address the issues that the community uplifted and let us know. Fifth is the funding and implementation phase, where we really get into the weeds of the contracting, how is this going to look like, deliverables, scope of works. And the last stage, which we haven't gone into for the first cohort yet, just because the first cohort is still ongoing, would be the evaluation. So measuring the efficacy, how did everything go, what are some glows and grows essentially. Next slide, please.
Just want to touch on that really quick, Omar, with the
Yeah, of
process
course.
that you guys took, because we do that as well at Zencity. And when we talk about building trust, it's like a loop we share with clients. And it's telling your residents, hey, first we want to hear from you. Then,
Mhm.
okay, this is what we heard. Now we're going to go back and implement based off of your concerns. And then what you guys are about to do, go back and reevaluate how we're performing. And I think doing that ongoing is really what does increase the levels of trust that people have in local government. So love that slide, love the process that you guys are running with LA Repair.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. And something I want to touch there was that some people that are new to the program, let's just say they heard of it in during the voting stage, which is later on, right? They might be saying something along the lines. This is something we commonly heard was, "Well, I never heard about this. I never submitted an idea." Well, we've been here. I promise you. We've been leaning into these community organizations that have been assisting us. But some of the folks that have followed it since the beginning really can advocate to see, oh yeah, they were here a few months ago, now they're back, and we're excited to see this roll out. So it really is like an information campaign throughout this whole course, just to update folks, because it is a timeline, right? It doesn't all run at the same time. So that's a great point. So it really is an informational. PSA to the community every time we go back, saying we've been here, we're doing it. We haven't forgotten anything. So I did want to go into how were these repair zones selected. Again, these repair zones have historically been underserved or systemically uh, affected by certain policies, rules, regulations, so on and so forth. So some of the considerations were employment and poverty data, home access to internet, COVID-19 cases, CDC's social vulnerability index, common viral screen index, and historically redline neighborhoods. And if we gather all this, as we gathered all this information and aggregated it, we really did notice that there were uh, consistently the same neighborhoods were affected by these factors quite heavily. So we, you know, went into this and leaned into it and determined that these would be the repair zones. So next slide, please. And in the map here, you'll see the 9 repair zones that were uh, selected to be repair zones. In green, we have the first cohort. So we started with 3 particular repair zones. And you might be wondering, why are some neighborhoods bundled up? So our program used the community plan areas, and this was through the planning department. In retrospect, we might have changed this slightly differently, but for the sake of this program was started, we leaned into the community plan, which incorporates different neighborhoods. So, for example, something as broad as South LA, that includes quite a few different neighborhoods, but in the community planning map, that's how it's deemed. Or, for example, Arleta Pacoima, 2 distinct neighborhoods, um, but nonetheless, that's how the community plan. So here we have a breakdown of how the populations, the council offices, and then when they were implemented. So this really does give an insight in leaning back into the factors that went into consideration. That's where these neighborhoods it really overlapped. So the data was it wasn't any proprietary data. It was really just a bunch of collection of metadata analysis that we've done in-house. Next slide, please. And some of the issues or some of the I guess things we prioritized for the steering committees, idea collections, and voting. Really, the community facing program portions of this program were that we really try to be as transparent as possible. Right, going back into what we mentioned about that information campaign of keeping everyone up to date where we're at. We try to make it as accessible as possible. So we offered everything online. So you can submit your ideas online, you can submit your voting online. But we also offered in-person opportunities because we are aware that not everyone has access to the internet or technology. So some repair zones, I'll give the example of Skid Row, which was one of our repair zones. Not quite a bit of the population does not have access to any cell phones or tablets or computers. So it was definitely vital to lean into those in-person events there, and as well as lean into our local partners in each repair zone that know the community, right? Because we might have an idea that, oh, there's a library in this neighborhood, but maybe it's not as well attended as another library. So leaning into their guidance and their advice on best practices and how to approach the community with respect, of course, and consideration of its history, its the community there really paid dividends heavily. So, considering how big the city is, that's what worked for us. Now, granted, it might be different for other communities or other cities, but we're happy to dive in a bit more as with the question and answers on some of our practices for LA Repair. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. Before I kind of dig a little bit deeper and ask the panel some questions, Ronell, did you have anything that you wanted to add there? So I know you had a big part of that process as well.
Yeah, thank you, Philly. I would just add in regards to our selection process, we really wanted to ensure that we accounted for historically impacted communities. Um, when we noticed that with the issues that we prioritize, like COVID impact, issues like digital inclusion, food access, and also the CDC's vulnerability index, there were an intersection on poverty and race, right? And so we were able to highlight the disproportionate impact of historically harmed communities at the intersection of poverty and race. And 80% of the communities impacted by those historically um, that historic harm represented 80% of communities of color. And so that was an interesting thing that I felt was, worth mentioning. But it also, I think, when we're looking at how to mitigate issues that we're experiencing in this time now with the attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, or the way issues are prioritized, and how in California we have a Prop 209 that prevents allocation of resources, funding, or employment based off of protected class status. But we're also still trying to be strategic, right, in addressing these historically harmed communities. Our approach was to use those proxy indicators because we know that there's a disproportionate impact of people of color across the board with a lot of these issue areas that were highlighted. And by doing so, we're able to mitigate challenges like legislation of Prop 209, but make sure that our target demographics are actually beneficiaries in programs like LA Repair. So that's one thing I would uplift, and just to everyone that's on the front line of addressing historic harm, just stay on that front line and be innovative in your approaches. The way that we approached this work was also community centered. Like Omar mentioned, we worked with community from the idea phase all the way through implementation. And another a big part of that is compensation when possible, right? A lot of times we show up in these spaces as full-time employees, but a lot of times we're asking for impact the community's time, right? Which is scarce. But we really tried to make sure our processes were inclusive, and we tried to mitigate barriers to participation, whether that was, offering gift cards when possible, working with our community-based organizations, and compensating them for their community engagement expertise, providing childcare, food at times, right, to ensure that we were lowering barriers to participation, which I think is another big part of ensuring maximized participation.
Wow, very good. Thank you for sharing that. To that point, I want to ask the entire panel here because we've kind of talked about there's a lot of challenge in getting people to participate. We know that number one for our guests here today is trying to do that in a public forum. And LA having sitters for parents to come out and share their feedback is amazing. I know I could benefit from that. But I want to ask you guys, when obviously with a budget planning process, there's a lot of collaboration across cities and counties, and council is one of those as well. Just curious, how did you guys go about collaboration with your council members and trusted messengers to kind of encourage participation and also share with them the feedback you were getting from your residents? What was that process like for you guys?
I'll quickly jump in. Um, I think our elected partners are a critical partner and stakeholder in the success of programs like LA Repair. Not only are they the ones that champion efforts like this through the legislative process, they also are advocates to continue funding for efforts like this, right? It's only through our elected officials where programs and efforts like this can continue. So just hats off to our elected officials for their support with LA Repair and continued support with efforts like this. With that being said, we definitely leverage the relationship of our elected officials to connect with community. Our elected officials have strong relationships with their communities. They know who the leaders are, they know who the community based organizations are. One of the big parts of our recruitment process was engaging our elected officials to ensure that they were able to provide an open call to their constituents, and letting them know about leadership opportunities that were available through the LA Repair program. So that was really, really great because it allowed us to leverage their field deputies and the relationships that they have in the community to recruit people for our steering committees and advisory committee for our LA repair process. I'm not sure if Omar wanted to add to that, and we can hand it off to Kayla.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ronell. It really was important to include council as much as possible. Even in the conception of the program, we had some rules that essentially that some of the community engagement partners would have to be ultimately approved by the council office. So they had a stake in the game since the start, and that's definitely proven very important because they ultimately can say, well, yes, this particular organization is very well uh, connected in the community, or they could provide us some info that we might have not known, which might have been more not as beneficiary to outreach. But yeah, thank you so much, Rona, and I'll pass it off to Caleb.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so our budget really, Charles County government is just a small piece or a small component of our budget. We also provide funding, well, not me, but Charles County Government's Board of County Commissioners provides funding to our sheriff's office, to Charles County Public Schools, and some other key partners. So when developing this budget survey, we really wanted to focus on the fact that we just didn't want to hear from Charles County government employees or Charles County residents, but also wanted to make sure that our partner agencies, we know that they have a huge stake in our budget and that they have priorities that they want to see, and making sure that they're involved in the process as well. So we made intentional efforts to share the survey with our key partner agency groups and making sure that they send it to their networks and their audience so that their input is also considered in our budget.
I love that. That actually raises another question I wanted to ask you guys about like getting the surveys out and how are you reaching people to participate and share their feedback. We know from our guests in the room that right now a lot of people are doing the public forum or community meetings, which can be challenging to get a lot of people to come out and do that. So what unique tactics have worked for you guys to really engage with residents and get them to participate in sharing their feedback around the budget?
I could share a bit on that. Oh, I'm sorry, Kayla, you wanted to share?
I'll go after you. You can go ahead.
No problem. We really just leaned in again to our community partners, and we try to be as flexible as possible, right? So if we heard about a local farmers market that is there regularly, we would go to that. If there was an opportunity to present at a neighborhood council meeting, we would definitely, do a presentation and offer an opportunity to do idea collection submissions there, and as well as creating outreach toolkits, virtual outreach toolkits, and this looked like providing pre-created graphics, language, links, and sent it out to our partners so they can all share it amongst themselves and to their local networks as well. So flexibility really is the name of the game here, and being able to mold into each community because some communities might be very active civically, some may be a bit different. So we would have to approach that differently and approach, for example, private entities or storefronts and see, hey, do you mind if our community partner here sets up a little table in front just to promote this program we've got going on? But it's very well attended there, so that would be another means. So it really is, there really is no one size fits all in this situation.
We also had polling places at different locations throughout the community, at our libraries. We had community engagement specialist organizations who served as polling places as well. And shout out to Omar and other folks on the team who went across the city far and wide collecting those votes from those polling places at all of those different locations.
And just to go off what Omar said, those stakeholder outreach toolkits was something that we really leaned on this year, because we know that like family, friends, and peers are like most trusted sources for our community, and that word of mouth really has been one of the most effective ways to engage, to get residents to know about different like online surveys and engagement opportunities, and to also get them to participate. So we really tried to focus on developing these toolkits that includes links to social media posts about the budget survey that they can easily share with their networks, flyers that they can print and put in their community spaces, videos that they can share with their peers for them to learn more about the budget process, the engagement, what it means. So this really helped spread the word about the online surveys that we had going on, and then also to kind of help bridge that large gap in trust between government and our community, because we know that if we post it, the likelihood of them trusting it from us, from them actually participating, is really low. But if they see it from their friends or their family or their peers, they might be um, more motivated to participate.
100%. I want to ask you specifically, Kayla, beyond that, were there any other like tools or technologies that you implemented to kind of streamline and enhance their participation? I know word of mouth is big, but just curious if there was anything else that you guys tried.
I would say primarily the toolkits, and overall the Zencity Engage platform really was effective in us streamlining communication about the budget in general, because it kind of served as like a one-stop shop hub for residents to access everything about the budget, such as a timeline, resources for them to like look at archive budgets from past years, to look at videos where our director of fiscal administrative services is explaining the budget process, and to also sign up for notifications. So like, hey, the budget public hearing is coming up, or hey, the survey is about to close in 2 weeks. If you haven't participated yet, please participate, or share with your family and friends to participate. And then also, we were able to share the results of the budget survey through the Engage platform as well. So I think personally, in a time where like the digital world is really crowded and noisy, the Engage platform really was helpful, where we were able to put all accessible information about the budget just in one place and send residents directly to that link to access everything.
Amazing, love that. And then also, like you said, you got to close that loop and then share the feedback and the results with them, right? I really think that that helps increase trust. And when it's budget cycle again next year, they'll be a lot more willing to participate. For Ronell and Omar, kind of a similar question, but what unique outreach tactics outside of kind of the word of mouth and going in person did you guys use specifically during the voting stage? I'm really curious about what worked to kind of help you guys get more community participation.
Yeah, happy to share some insight on how Zencity helped us out here. Again, one of our key principles and the whole one of the biggest program goals for this program was to increase transparency and trust in the government, right? So we wanted to be as transparent as possible, and Zencity did provide a lot of those tools to do so. I'll give you an example. During the voting stage of the program, we asked community members to cast their votes online for their favorite proposal, and then from there it would be, we would vote, count up tallies and everything. But the tools that Zencity provided, like hash um, the hash information in the back end that tracks the IP addresses, I think is hash IP address. A lot of the metadata in the back end really did allow us to make sure that the vote data was not only accurate but transparent as well. So we were able to make sure that the votes submitted were authentic, were from the repair zone itself, and they were not duplicates. So that really did help with a lot of that transparency there, though, and also essentially with the accessibility as well. It allowed for us to meet people at home if they can't make it into a in-person event. So it did add to our arsenal of tools to be as transparent, but also as accessible as possible. But Ronell, I'd love to hear. I know you were such a big portion with a lot of the outreach. So if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, I think you said it well. The Zen City platform was very helpful. I really enjoyed getting the updates on the regular basis, understanding the progress, understanding the challenges that we were facing, so we were able to mitigate any issues with integrity. Like you mentioned, with being able to see where the IEP address is, and I think there was like one or two incidents that we had to address with that. So just really having a platform that helped us have confidence that we were using something that had strong integrity allowed us to have a cybersecurity component to it to ensure that our votes were real, right? And that we can communicate the truth to the community as far as the winning proposals, because those proposals were really, really great. And again, the community came up with the ideas, but many of the community-based organizations came up with some amazing proposals. And it was really hard to see some of those not get chosen, right? But it was through the Zen City platform that we were able to communicate that, like, hey, unfortunately, you didn't win. This is, and it allowed us to move forward with integrity. So, yes.
And just to touch on like the IP piece for the people in the room, at Zencity, we don't collect any like personal identifiable information, but in simple terms, to not get too techie, we know where the device lives or sleeps, so to speak. So even to Omar's slide when he showed you the map of LA, we can get really specific on where respondents live, which again, it will help you be more strategic in how you respond. And then also in LA's case, where they are trying to have these different projects for different neighborhoods, they can be really intentional because they know how people are feeling by location. So just to clear up without getting too much into the technology weeds. A few minutes here before we open it up for Q&A from the guests in the room. But speaking of transparency, Kayla, I wanted to kind of ask you, how do you balance, transparency with like the complexity of municipal budgets when you're trying to communicate that with residents?
Yeah, I think I touched on this a little bit in my like intro, but one of the things that we kind of like realized from our past experience with communicating about the budget is that it's not just about making the information available, but making it understandable for residents and presenting the information in a way that they can easily interpret and understand like what this means for me and my household, and just like me as a resident in Charles County. So we kind of tried to use a variety of communication formats to kind of break down the budget and get people to understand it, and to also therefore get them to want to participate, because you're not really going to participate in something if you don't understand it. Also, we tried to focus on that when shaping our online survey. We drafted the questions, and from our standpoint, like working in government, we understood what the questions meant, but we realized residents might not understand what the questions meant. So we leveraged a resident focus group, our Citizens Academy program during budget season, reviewed the survey. We kind of like launched it for that group specifically before we launched it to the public, and asked them like, does this make sense? Do you understand? And they provided some very valuable feedback. Like, I was trying to participate in this activity during the survey and I didn't understand what this question meant. What are you asking from me with this? And so we were able to take their feedback and revise the survey to kind of make sure that we were asking questions that residents understood. Because if they don't understand the survey questions, then the feedback that we're going to get from them is not going to really be useful to us, or we might see them starting the survey and not completing it to the end because they don't understand what they're being asked of. So we really tried to, like, with our engagement and the information that we were putting out, making sure that we were being transparent, but also making sure that they were able to understand it. And we created for the first time this year like a budget and brief document when we had the proposed budget, to have residents understand, okay, this is where the money is coming in, this is our revenue sources, and this is how we are proposing to use it, this is where the money will be going. And we kind of handed those documents out at the public hearing that we had, so residents had a little bit of context and information before they were giving their feedback at the hearing, or through other formats. So just trying to make sure that we were being transparent throughout the entire process and providing that education to them the entire time, so that their feedback was actually really coming from a educated standpoint. And so, because a lot of times they just don't know. And sometimes we slam them for not knowing, like, oh, they provided this comment or this feedback, but we have been doing this. We have been doing this the whole time. And it's like, we can't blame them for not knowing in the first place.
I love that you said that. I mean, pre Zencity, I've been here 4 years now, so I get it. But as a regular resident, you are so right, Kayla. We just really do not know. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a very large city, and like little things, like I live in a busy intersection. People U-turn here all the time. I don't even know who I would reach out to with that concern for like my safety being on the corner of this street. So I love that you shared that, and I love that you guys took the extra step to put the questions in a language that would make sense to residents. That's so huge because we really just go about our day to day. We don't understand how hard you guys are working on these budgets every single year and how valuable our feedback is. I think the more you can communicate that out, it will be received really well. I love that you said that. Well, we have a little less than 10 minutes, so I do want to open this up so I can stop asking questions and the people here on the webinar can ask questions. So if you have any questions for our panel or just some thoughts that you would like to share with the group, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can have a few minutes to run through some Q&A before we wrap up. While I wait on that, Ronell, I'm not sure if you had anything else that you wanted to add. It looked like you were going to unmute, but feel free if there was anything you wanted to tack on to that. Omar, you as well.
Yeah, Kayla, I think what you provided so much insight, and I think in retrospect, it would have been amazing to offer some sort of like office hour spaces to give people a space to ask questions and keep them up to date where we're at, which I think, if we were to do this again, definitely will might consider something like that. But for the sake of what you mentioned on making everything as digestible as possible, what we did on our end is we created these voter guides, which really summarized a lot of the information from the proposals that were submitted. Because, as you can imagine, the proposals were multi pages, very extensive, and not everyone had the time to read for 30 minutes per proposal. So we created these voter guides, which really made everything into a quick, easy to read per repair zone pamphlet, which was accessible in person as we delivered them to local community members, but as well as online. So, but it gave the people the option to understand what they were voting for, but also if they wanted to learn more about the details, they had that option by looking at the actual proposal. So it was definitely we try to meet them to where they were. Uh, but yes, Kayla, that was a great idea. So I really was writing everything down as you spoke. Great insight there.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is, working on large efforts like this comes with many challenges. And one of the things that I would say is our role was to really ensure it was community led, but we wanted to ensure that there were guardrails around it, right? That ensured compliance, legal compliance, legislative compliance. But outside of that, we really wanted it to be completely community led. But those guardrails are super important. And I think that that goes back with transparency, right? You want to ensure that it's community led, but you also want to be transparent with what those guardrails are. So you're not making false promises or setting up expectations that you'll down the line have to take back, right? So being very clear with what those guardrails are sometimes is a challenge. So we worked with our city attorneys often, and had a feedback loop. Sometimes we didn't have the answer right away. We had to go have that, conversation and then come back with an answer. But ensuring that those guardrails are there and that feedback loop is transparent is super critical from beginning to end of the process.
Yeah, I'm getting like hearts and clapping emojis from the audience as you guys were discussing that topic. So it's definitely resonating for sure. We do have a question here. It says, at what point in the budget development process did you invite resident input? I guess getting really specific on when you reached out for that input, where in the process did you guys decide to do that?
Well, I think for us, we had a program. So we're seeing the city's budget process interested in adapting some of these processes and practices. However, our program was designated dollars. So the development of it, as far as how those how the program will be developed, how ideas will be collected, all those things were developed in partnership with community, leaders. But we went to the community for the voting, right? So that was a part of the of what we also went to the community for the idea collection as well. So we collected ideas from the community, which helped us identify what the community's priority areas were, and then community-based organizations develop proposals based off of those ideas, and then we went back to the community for the vote. But I want to stress that the whole program from beginning to end was developed in partnership with community. Even the unique component of ours, one thing I would highlight is oftentimes with participatory budget projects, funding is allocated, ideas are collected, projects are identified, and then the city or government agency implement those projects. And what we did was a little different, where we partnered with community based organizations to buy programs and services with the dollars. So the full allotment of funding went into the community through the partnerships of community based organizations who won funds to implement their proposals. And that's a unique component of participatory budget processes that I think is really important to highlight, and a big part of how we ensured community participation from beginning to end.
100%. One final question for you guys before we wrap up here, and this is for everyone on the panel. If you had to start over, what would you do differently in your public engagement approach?
I think I can start. I would say next year we really want to focus on meeting residents where they are. I think overall we were successful in boosting participation. Last year, I think we received about 300 responses to our online survey, and this year we received about 1,300. So we did see a huge increase in our participation levels for our online engagement activities, but we still struggled with receiving representation from key groups such as residents from a younger demographic, and then also our newer residents. We still receive most of the participants in our survey have lived in the county for 10 to 15 years or even 20 years or more. And we really want to hear from residents who have been here about 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5. So next year we are looking at doing some more pop-up engagement opportunities in high traffic areas across the county, hoping that this effort would reach a more diverse population and ensure that their voices are represented in our engagement efforts.
Amazing. I know we're right at time. I want to, Ronell, Omar, if you could just give like a one thing in response to that question, because I'm curious what your answer is, and then we'll wrap because I know we are at 1 o'clock.
I'll defer to Omar.
Sure thing. Thank you again for this amazing opportunity. But if we were to do this all over, it's really hard to say just because there's been so many curveballs that have been tossed at us based off each repair zone. Because as I mentioned, no one community in the city of Los Angeles is the same, and I think that's part of the beauty of this city. But again, going as one department into being split up into 9 different areas, it does provide that. But I think what I can really accredit our team for doing such a great job is the flexibility, the ability to adapt and to reach out, to leverage, to lean in, ask for support, or be that department that folks can depend on and provide those materials for those in-person events and make it as accessible by providing, for example, childcare during some of our voting events to make sure that the adults could be fully engaged in learning about the proposals, or even inviting, for example, when we did the proposal events, inviting the organizations to meet the community and state their case on why they think their proposal should be elected. So, uh, I think we learned a lot, and I'd love to have that conversation if anyone's interested on what are some of the things we learned about, but definitely having an open mind and understanding what your department is capable, and leaning into that regarding being adaptable. So
Amazing. Thank you so much. I just want to thank our panel. This was a fantastic discussion. I know it's going to kick me out of here in about 20 seconds. So there is a poll on the screen for those who participated. We'd love your feedback and just to hear from you. There's also something for some additional resources you can find in the handout tab, including a guide for best practices for budget engagement. Thank you so much on behalf of Zencity to our panel and our guests. I hope this is valuable for you guys, and we'll see you at the next one.
thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.